Good morning, Jeffrey Passan.
Hold on. That's the introduction?
Yeah, that's all you get today.
Great. 4 in a row. What do you want?
Yeah,
I'm serious today. We're not going to talk about your stupid AirPods and your dog's intestinal channel.
Yeah, we're torching the team today. We're getting angry, Jeff. They've lost four straight. Things are dire here.
Is that possible? Like, Brock, are you capable of torching?
No.
Not really.
No.
No.
Too nice, Passan. Did you find your AirPods last week?
I did. I'm wearing them right now. Brock, you would torch with like a Bic. Like Mike, I feel like Mike is like flamethrower guy from the movies. Yeah. But Brock, you're too nice for that.
That's why we balance each other out. Yeah. Like when I get upset about a guy bunting in the second inning against the Yankees, Brock's here to, balance that out a little bit.
How do you balance that one out, Brock?
Well, it's player empowerment. Severus has just been here a week or so. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe he missed the sign. Certainly, Dan didn't order the code red from the dugout there, and he's going to instill confidence in these guys. It'll be a teachable moment.
Yeah, well, there's a reason that the Rangers let him go.
Jeff, you're funny. So what are we watching? Seriously, 4-game losing streak here with the Mariners. They've given up 32 runs during these 4 games. Are we watching a little bump in the road, or are we watching a balloon popping?
I think it's more bump in the road than balloon popping. And it's very easy, a whole lot easier to get lost in a medium losing streak than it is to get consumed or engrossed by a long winning streak. It's just the nature of the sport. It's the nature of fandom. And sure, it would be nice if this team, not just had won those 4 games instead of lost them, but was playing the kind of baseball that we sort of got used to for a couple weeks. And I know it's kind of spoiled, though. No, I'm not allowed to say that word.
No.
I know it's
no.
I learn your lesson, Jeffrey. I know that when they're playing the kind of baseball that they were playing, you want that to never go away. But it's just not possible to maintain that over 162 games unless you're a great team. And this isn't a great team. I still think this is just a quite good team. And quite good guys in the American League West could be quite enough. There are just bound to be moments like this in the season, and I don't know. You guys know me. I'm not one to overreact one way or the other to long winning streaks or long losing streaks before we get to the end of May. And the Mariners still are in the position where I think ultimately they want to be, right?
Yeah, I think what's a little bit challenging is we're a couple weeks from your Memorial Day and end of May now, and the quarter pole of the season, and it's kind of been flipped on its head. I think if we're sitting here at 22-18 and the Mariners were pitching the way the Mariners have pitched the last 3 years and hit the way the Mariners have hit the last 3 years, I think people would kind of be able to say, this is kind of what I expected. But when it's kind of been flipped and the offense has been the one carrying a lot of this, and now through most metrics, Jeffrey, you look at it, and the pitching has been, it's been a problem. And been a reason now that they've lost 4 in a row. As you look at the next level metrics with their pitching, what does jump out to you?
This ain't the staff that we've seen the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. Like that's and I think there's a caveat to all this, and that is that they've been doing this without Logan Gilbert and George Kirby, right? Now, if Gilbert and Kirby come back and the Mariners pitching staff continues to struggle like this, and I think it's reasonable to sound those alarm bells. But they are in a position right now, guys. The proverbial, if you had told me scenario. Mm-hmm. If you had told me that Logan Gilbert was going to throw, how many innings has he thrown this year?
Logan?
Not a lot.
Not a lot, no.
Yeah.
I mean, Kirby's thrown 0. Logan's probably
Correct.
thrown, I don't know, 30?
20. Yeah. If you had told me that Logan Gilbert was going to throw half as many innings as other, top starters, and George Kirby wasn't going to throw a single inning. And oh, by the way, we're 2 weeks away from Memorial Day, and the Mariners are in first place. And oh yeah, on top of that, they actually have a really good offense. It would have been a total sign me up moment for everyone involved. So I understand your desire for having more from this team, and it's not unreasonable. Like, if in the same way, if you had told me that the Mariners are going to have one of the best offenses in baseball, I would have been like, they're running away with the division. And right now they are decidedly not running away with the division. The A's are nipping at their heels. The Astros are nipping at their heels. The Rangers are nipping at their heels. And the problematic part of all three of those things is that they're all 500 teams. Mm-hmm. And so if a 500 team is nipping at your heels, not where you want to be.
Yeah. By the way, I was very lucky. 30.1 innings for Logan Gilbert this year. So, not what you would have hoped.
You're good, Mike.
I'm lucky is what I am, Jeff. So let me ask you then. We've been having a little bit of a debate, and it goes back to some of that first question I asked you or just was complaining about with the bunt last night. We spent some time this morning talking about kind of a two Dans situation. There's this one Dan Wilson that we are scratching our heads at times about some of the in-game decision-making, and it does not seem to always make a ton of sense from the modern baseball standpoint, versus this other Dan Wilson that seems to have an incredible hold over the clubhouse, an incredible hold over the philosophy and aggressiveness overall of the team, and seems to really, seems to be impacting the culture in general in a very positive way. How do you balance those two parts or those two elements of a manager's job in today's game?
Well, you hope that one does not far outweigh the other. And if it does, you hope the ugly side just doesn't rear its head particularly often. But when you have 162 games, there are going to be quite a few moments of strategy where it's on the manager. And there is no quicker way into the doghouse of fans than bad button pushing. And I think some of that is reps, right? A lot of guys who are managing now, the majority still, did have minor league managing experience, and they were in those scenarios where they learned and they made the right call or made the wrong call, and then next time around didn't do it again. And part of me wonders if some of this is just Dan Wilson as first-time manager being the guy who hasn't made those mistakes and almost needs to experience them in order to learn from them. So, listen, give me the guy all day who has a hold over the clubhouse. That, to me, is the hard part. Like, strategy can be learned, feel can't. Mm-hmm. And I think Dan Wilson's got a lot of feel, and so I'm going to lean into that and say that there are enough people in the organization who have an understanding of proper strategic moves that they will be able to figure out how to get him on the right path there.
Jeffrey, if you wouldn't mind pulling up your computer now that you got your AirPods in and pulling up your fancy-dancy Savant pages or stats or your databases that the great John Clayton had, if you wouldn't mind pulling up both Bryce Miller and Luis Castillo, because I think therein also is some of the nervousness of Mariner fans. Like if it was just Emerson or Logan Evans or Luis F. Castillo that were, getting hit and kind of getting rocked, again, because of inexperience and otherwise, you kind of live with that. Some of the challenge of this start has been the struggles that we have not seen ever of Bryce Miller and maybe some of Luis Castillo at 32 velo down, whiff rate down, some of these things kind of starting to pop a little bit. I'm curious, we'll start with Bryce. As you kind of look at his next level numbers, what pops out to Jeff Passan?
I'm going to answer both of them at once because they both have the same problem. They're not striking out enough guys and they're walking too many.
Yeah.
And that is a recipe for disaster right there. The beauty of this Mariners staff over the last few years, guys, is Gilbert came up, as Kirby came up, as Miller and Wu came up and cemented themselves in this rotation, is that all five guys punch guys out and all five guys don't walk people. And it's a sign, depending on who it is, because I think it's a little bit different between Castillo and Miller. I think Miller's he's just lacking feel right now. He doesn't have his stuff. Something is impeding it. When you see those numbers going in the opposite direction, it's usually somebody doesn't have feel on his pitches. And I think that's probably the case with Miller right now, whereas with Castillo, the quality of the stuff is just down. And I think maybe he's learning on the fly how he needs to pitch with the new repertoire.
What does that look like
Luis Castillo,
now? Just to focus on that with Castillo. And, I know what that used to look like back in the day. What does it look like for the modern pitcher to develop and evolve into his 30s without the same stuff he used to have?
I think that depends on who the guy is and his pitchability. And that's why, to me, it's confusing with Luis Castillo.
Can you explain that term? Because I hear that a lot. What do you mean by pitchability?
Pitchability is with the stuff that you have, what you are capable of doing with it. It's essentially a term that's used for guys who don't throw particularly hard and yet still find a way to be effective. And, there are examples of this all around Major League Baseball. I think a guy like Michael Wacha is really interesting. His stuff was never quite as good as Luis Castillo's, but Wacha was a guy his fastball was mid to upper 90s, whose best pitch was and continues to be his changeup, and that to me is where I would theoretically see hope for Luis Castillo. I would be looking at that changeup, which has been such an outpitch of his, and the changeup's just not very good right now, and the fastball is below average, and the slider is there, and what you need to do at that point is become a command pitcher. You need to become somebody. And command, guys, just if we're doing definition hour here, command is very simple. It is the ability to put the ball precisely where you want. Control is the ability to throw a baseball for strikes. Command is the ability for you to give me a spot and me to hit it with multiple pitches. And Luis Castillo, I think, right now, doesn't really have a whole lot of either. Certainly not command. And in order to aid gracefully as a pitcher, you need to develop that kind of command. Let's use Nathan Eovaldi, for example. He's got a bigger repertoire than Castillo. Eovaldi's always thrown 6 pitches, but over time, what has allowed him to maintain his effectiveness in the face of declining and diminishing velocity is that he doesn't walk guys. And if you don't walk guys, man, does that make up for a lot. It just allows you a greater margin of error. Home runs don't hurt nearly as much because you don't have guys who you put on base without essentially doing a whole lot. And right now, the Mariners starters, they simply are not throwing enough quality strikes. And unless that changes, they are going to continue, guys, to be ineffective.
We have, during the draft season, Daniel Jeremiah on our show every Wednesday, Jeff, and it's super fun, right? And he is to kind of his databases as you are to all of your numbers. And he would tell you that I think in the history of the NFL, or certainly the last 30 years in the modern era, that a big receiver that runs 4.6 or worse just doesn't make it. It's like Mike Evans and nobody else. Like that difference between 4.4 and 4.6 is that tangible. Can Bryce Miller and Luis Castillo be what they have been if their fastballs are 92, 93, and not 95 and 97?
Absolutely. Like, for sure, you can be an effective pitcher in Major League Baseball in the, I guess, low 90s. I mean, I look at a guy like Jose Quintana, Andrew Heaney this year, Ben Lively the last couple of years. Those are guys who are all sort of hovering around 90 miles per hour. A guy like Chris Bassett is more like a, 91 to 92 guy. Seth Lugo is at 92. He also throws like 11 pitches. But, yeah, it's possible.
Okay.
It's just really hard.
Yeah.
And because they have been pitchability guys with velocity, because this Mariners, practically the entire rotation has shown over the last few years the ability to look like an ace at any given time. I think that they can evolve into that. With Miller, I'm not sure it's necessary. I think Miller's stuff still has a little bit of hop to it. But Castillo, it's down. It's different. And I don't know, man, if you are a sinker baller, maybe focusing on less on swing and miss and more on weak contact is the kind of evolution that Luis Castillo needs to embrace. Now, listen, there's a chance that his stuff could come back, and maybe his arm's hurting right now when figures out how to get past that, or maybe he finds a way to pick up what he's working with.
I think you're onto something there, Jeff, because I think some of his best starts have been when they've needed him to go deep, and he has pitched more to contact, and he has thrown a lot more at the sinker. Yep. I think you're actually very much onto something there. All right, let me ask you about something ridiculous. Maybe this is a very short conversation, but I'll at least ask you about it because we are lucky enough to have you on the show today. I have seen some probably silly suggestions out there that the Pirates should trade Paul Skenes. Now, I would be shocked if that was going to happen. But to play along with the scenario, if the Pirates were to trade Paul Skenes, should the Mariners be interested? And if so, how much of their stockpile of 9 top 100 prospects would they have to give up to get him?
Yes, they should be extraordinarily interested because I think you could probably make the argument that aside from Tarek Skubal, Paul Skenes is the best pitcher in baseball right now. And how much would I be willing to give up? A lot. But I think that the Pirates, if they were to trade Skenes, would want Gilbert or Kirby as the headliner. And that is not something I'm quite assured that I would do. If they want a prospect package, though, yes, just give it to them. If they want Emerson, give them to them. If they want, Celestin, give them to them. If they want Ryan Sloan, give them to them.
What if they want some of those guys and one of your 5 starters? Maybe it's not Bryce or Logan, but Logan or George. What if it's Brian Wu?
Yeah, I would include Brian Wu. Just because I still haven't seen a full season from him. Mm-hmm. And I as great as Wu is capable of being, as great as we have seen him be, there's still that thing in the back of my head that says that this guy, until he goes out and throws 180 innings in a season, I just don't know, man. I would much rather have Paul Skenes there. And to go into a playoff series with Skenes, Gilbert, Kirby is an absurd hurdle for your opponent to leap. It's not everything. It's not going to guarantee you winning those series, but it's sure going to put you in a great position to go out and win it. So, yeah, I think in Major League Baseball, when it comes to stars, get them. And that especially goes on the position playing side, but I think it's applicable with pitchers too. Now, granted, I'd be scared. and I'd be scared because this is such a high-risk trade. Mm-hmm. And let's say that Paul Skenes, I hope this does not happen, but let's say Paul Skenes blows out his elbow in June or July. You are missing him for that playoff run, and best case scenario, you're getting him back right around the time of the playoffs the next year, and you just don't know what you're going to be getting. And then you have another season on top of that, where usually it takes a year for a guy to get feel when he's coming back from Tommy John. So it's just, you would be making this move to try and hit in a specific window. The downside, though, is terrifying. If we're talking about a position player with Paul Skenes' pedigree, if we're talking about like a frontline young guy who's going to put up 6 or 7 or 8 wins above replacement, I would give up pretty much anyone they ask for. Just
Jeff,
because with position players, if you can get a guy who is what Julio was supposed to be, you just are willing to overpay for that. And I think part of it, we're getting to the point now, guys, where the Mariners have been so consistently excellent at identifying, drafting / signing, and developing players that if they're confident that this is part of their future, that this is something that they believe that they can replicate, it gives you even more incentive to start trading some of these guys for established big leaguers.
You know, it's fascinating. You know, what's fascinating, Jeff, is you're having this conversation is like crazy as it would be for the Pirates to trade Skenes. There's a big part of me sitting here on the other side going, it would be crazy for the Mariners to be trading from a situation they've never had. They got 9 top 100 guys. It's not just one Julio or one Cal, that's right. You've got player after player after player, right? And you've been patient and patient and patient in this like chasm between where your pitching is and all these prospects coming is closing and closing and closing. Why would the Mariners ever now at this point be on the crazy side and trade a Selznick and Emerson, a Roy, like all of this amazing talent that they've never had in this kind of volume?
I mean, totally reasonable. Like it's hard to construct a counter argument to that other than this is a ringless franchise, and there needs to be urgency at some point. And sometimes, the Mariners are in the position that they're in right now, guys, because you can accuse them of good decision making and of good process. And going and sending a bunch of prospects and the control that you have over them away for a single guy is the epitome of eggs in one basket management. And that sort of thing tends not to work out well.
Yeah, it's not worked out great in the past.
It especially goes against the risk matrix that this team seems to employ. Jerry Dipoto's reputation for a guy who's kind of shooting at the hip a little bit, both verbally and managerially, it's very well established at this point. But I'm not sure it's quite as fair on the managerial side. The guy has made a lot of trades, but if you go and look at those trades, none of them have been like uber risky. Doing something like what you're proposing, Brock, that would be incredibly risky. And the reward's a parade. And when you hear me say something like that, it just brings out emotions, I imagine, in everyone. Imagine getting to be a part of that. And if this is the move that gets us there, we have to do it. And if we're so good at drafting and developing guys and turning Logan Evans from, 5th round pick into what he is right now and hitting downdraft guys, then we can weather it. And we should, because getting superstars, as we know, is a really hard thing to do. But, to be honest, that's what the third pick in the draft is for.
I was just about to say, even a little easier when you've got the third pick in the upcoming draft. So, Jeff, we could go and talk about this for another hour. I will just read you a text from our texter, Carter, from Tacoma. Why can't Passan be on video so we can see his dumb, ageless smile? Is that what you have?
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I mean, I think that's a compliment, but I don't know.
Is it? But is it?
It
really
is.
right in between.
We have been verging. I did not anticipate this happening. We have been verging into uncomfortable territory in recent weeks when it comes to comments on my looks that I frankly never anticipated. When I was on Monday Night Raw a couple of weeks ago, the general response was, why does he look like the children that he's standing next to? and that was, that was okay.
Right.
But once it started getting into this guy looks like he has body parts in his refrigerator, that's where it was a little much.
You don't want that.
That's where it was a little much.
That goes too far. Jeff,
you know what? Let's do video next week.
All right, video next week with Jeff Passan. That's a promise. Jeff, we will talk to you then. Thank you, sir.
See you, boys.
All right, there you go. There's Jeff Passan, our weekly conversation with him, and you never know exactly where it's going to go, Brock. There's certainly a lot in there.